Valentin.
Hey, good morning, Dale. Thanks a lot for inviting me on this. I just watched the last couple of minutes of the last podcast. Very exciting webinar.
Oh, thank you so much. You're the icing on the cake today, Valentin. So I read a little bit about your bio, and you used to be a money manager for BNP Paribas before you went to, kind of what did you do? Reinvent yourself as a writer and journalist, and I looked up the the definition of F.A.C.E.
Actually, that's funny. When I made the switch in 2012, because I got laid off because of the European financial crisis, and then I came over here, I thought that actually what you do as an analyst and what you do as a journalist is not that much different. It's you take in a lot of information, you analyze it, and then you write a report or you write an article. But essentially, that's it. You soak in info and you give out info. So obviously the formats are different and the objective is different, and you have to adjust the writing style and everything. But essentially, that's it.
I mean, bottom line, it's safer to write an article than to trade that article, right?
Oh yes, and actually that's for sure. But the same can be said with reports, because the reports that you do as an analyst, I mean, if you don't have the complete discretion to trade in your portfolio, and I was too young for that at that time, then it's similar. You just give your recommendation, but ultimately the responsibility lies with the portfolio manager.
So I'm interested in your ideas and your writings, and wondering in this era, because I know you have a great interest in China, and I wanted to start off with the executive order that was passed or signed into law by Mnuchin and President Trump about anyone doing business with North Korea is going to be sanctioned from the financial system if they don't cooperate. And there's already a lot of movement to de-dollarize the financial system. President Trump seems to think China will cooperate with that. I'm thinking that maybe just for a while till it hurts or the risk is too much. What do you think China's going to do in this situation, combined with the geopolitical risk and now an executive order that's going to sanction people? And basically, let's face it, China does all business that North Korea does, 90% of it's with China.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yes, I have researched China quite a bit because our publication has done that, and I wanted to. By the way, how long is this webinar?
As long as you want to go. Normally it's 20, 30 minutes.
Okay.
So
very good.
It's not an issue though. So just relax, and I'll let you know, like your psychiatrist. I'll say time's up. Right?
Okay, very good. I just want to make sure.
Anyway, my psychiatrist would say that to me. Okay, Dale, I've heard enough of your stuff. Get out of here. So
that's funny.
Yeah, don't worry about the time, buddy. We're interested in what you have in your head.
Okay, very good. So I have a lot of things in my head. I don't have that many charts, but I can tell you about China, and I have to go back a little bit for your listeners to really understand at least our perspective, which is somewhat unique to this whole problem. And then I'll get more into the game theory of Trump and China, which is very interesting. So what most people don't understand, and I think that goes for most countries, is that China is not one entity, the same way the United States is not one entity. Like people in Europe always complain, yeah, the United States always bombs, the Middle East. I'm like, yeah, but who is that? It's not the people. Like if you ask people on the street here, they're not for war. It's not even the whole of the government. Usually it's just part of the government. And
the military-industrial complex.
Exactly. And they do those things, but everybody thinks it's the whole country doing it. No, the same is true for China. Even though they have the Communist Party and it's more monolithic and centralized than the United States or Western Europe, they still have their own fights within the party. And that's actually to come back to my story, and this will tie into North Korea and also my personal story, because I got into writing for the Epoch Times because I started to practice Falun Gong when I was in Hong Kong in 2009, the spiritual practice that the Chinese Communist Party has been persecuting. So I didn't understand why are they persecuting those?
What is it, like a meditation technique, or?
Yeah, it's like a Can you see my screen, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, so so Falun Gong is and
you were able to leave with your kidney and heart and liver, because I saw the headline about harvesting of organs.
That's exactly. So Falun Gong itself, it's just like a meditation system, and
Okay.
and also spiritual teaching based on Buddhism and Taoism. But the Chinese Communist Party,
and the Chinese government persecutes people who practice this.
Exactly. More than look, there's so many people here. This is the meditation exercise. So many people in China had been practicing, almost 100 million. And then all of a sudden they get persecuted. And I didn't understand why, so I started reading Epoch. And they've been covering this for, the longest time, because some of the people who had to get out of China founded this Chinese paper, or a Chinese paper, to counter the propaganda. And so this is my colleague wrote, Matthew Robertson. This is a report about the state-run organ harvesting industry, which we've been covering for 10 years, where they take those prisoners of conscience, mostly Falun Gong practitioners, and they kill them, and they sell their organs. And now the mainstream media is catching on. They took them a while, but basically we've been leading that for a long time. And this is the reason I started getting in contact with Epoch, because I was reading all of that stuff. And I thought, it would be good, to write for an independent publication that is obviously also covers a topic which is dear to my heart, because I want the people in China, all of them really, to be free, but especially the Falun Gong practitioners to be able to practice again. Now, how does this tie into the current problems? And this is also, I think, why we have an edge in when we cover the political activity in China, is because not all of the Communist Party supported this crackdown. It was instigated mostly by the former President Jiang Zemin in 1999, and he had to step down in 2002. But the way it works, he stuffed some of the posts with his cronies, who would continue the persecution. And then actually the president, who was then for 10 years, Hu Jintao, from 2002 to 2012, he didn't actually want to carry that out, but he didn't have the power to stop it, because Jiang Zemin's cronies, they had the paramilitary, the police, all of that they had under control. So they still did all this stuff in the military hospitals, mostly under military supervision, this whole organ harvesting. And then the next guy comes in, Xi Jinping, and he is even less for this persecution policy, and he's even less pro Jiang Zemin, and they even tried to kill him, according to some sources that we have. So you have to imagine, in China there's always this fight, at least one big fight going on between the Jiang Zemin faction and the Reform faction, which recently, through Xi Jinping, has become more powerful, because he turned this anti-corruption campaign, but in reality, in China, everybody's corrupt. So he just got rid of a lot of the powerful young people, including this guy here, Zhu Yongkang. He used to control the police force. He had 1 million people under him, and under Xi Jinping, he was sentenced to life for corruption. But that's not the real story. And Bo Jilai and stuff like that, all those people. So that's what you have to imagine is going on in China. You have Xi Jinping, who, according to us, is pretty reasonable. He's still a communist, he's still a dictator, but relatively speaking, he's pretty reasonable, and he's not even that opposed to the United States and Donald Trump. And then you have the Jiang Zemin faction, who still has a few people left. And according to our information, they instigate North Korea to do stupid things. It's not Xi Jinping who says, "Hey, guys, launch a rocket so maybe we can have a better terms on our trade deal." No, he's not like that. It's the Jiang Zemin faction which stirs up trouble. They stirred up trouble in Hong Kong. Now they're using North Korea. And how does that affect China? China, in my opinion, does not like to see this happening because it's a massive risk. And
yeah, I see one of the risks before there's even any kind of armed conflict. You're showing that this is one of the things they're worried about, Korean refugees, and they're sending them back to face torture and execution. They're not giving them. Safekeeping or letting them exile.
Well, obviously not. If they're torturing their own people, then why would they care so much? I mean, they don't care about the people. I mean, all of the communists are like that. They hate people, but they do like power. So for China and even for Xi Jinping, it would be good to keep the northern half communist because it creates a buffer between the South and the United States to China. So that's what they would like to do. But on the other hand, they don't want, a nuclear war going on. And they don't want any war going on because the result of that may be that the North becomes free and under American control. And then you have the Americans standing right at your border, which the Chinese don't want. So you have a couple of different objectives here with respect to finally answering your questions about the trade. Yeah, it's the Chinese who do trade with North Korea. But I'm sure the Treasury Department doesn't even know who does the trade, which Chinese company, how it works. They can't control that, and China will just keep doing whatever they're doing because that is so opaque. That system is not like they send a wire transfer through J.P. Morgan to clear the coal trade. That nobody knows what's going on there. So and it's very it's not much. And it's probably also military is involved. So don't put too much on those executive orders. Those are the Trump cannot stop China trading with North Korea.
Well, isn't it true though that China has also developed something that if there was a problem with the SWIFT system, that they have created a system for financial transactions? If they were to have, isn't it part of their strategy to de-dollarize the world and move it more towards the yuan?
No, absolutely. I mean, from a game theoretical perspective, let's see.
That's what we do here. We trade. That's the game. So I'm curious. About the impact, our bailiwick is currency, so that's going to be a big part of this. If they say, okay, you're going to sanction us, we can't use the dollar, we have another system.
Sure. I mean,
but here you go. Why it won't be the world reserve currency? Could it be part of an ADR?
Yeah, sure. I mean, basically, the thing from a currency perspective, which unfortunately you can't even properly trade the yuan. It would be an interesting currency to trade. But so basically, first of all, yes, they have China and Russia are working on their independent system. Obviously, I mean, from their perspective, it makes sense, and they do this on every level. Yes, they have I think they set up. I don't know what it's called, but they do have a clearing system and a messaging system similar to SWIFT.
Okay.
They have their own credit card companies, and they started the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank, and they started all those institutions to basically rival the Western institutions. And they got more power now at the IMF, and they're part of the SDR, et cetera, and they're buying a ton of gold. So is that their strategy? Yes, absolutely. Does it make sense for them to do it? Yes, absolutely, because they don't want to be dependent on the United States. On the other hand, they are still massively dependent, first of all, because they still have a bunch of foreign exchange reserves. They do have a fair amount of gold. I think estimates range between 4,000 and 10,000 tons in total, not just official. But obviously in China, they could confiscate everything. But even if that's were the case, the assets traded in the financial system in
it's not deep enough, and it's not deep enough is why they can't be, right? Because of our treasury market and the deepness of it.
Yeah. Not just the deepness, also the, I mean, obviously we all complaining here about, how the, government becomes ever more authoritarian, but still, relatively speaking, there is a good legal system around the treasury market and the dollar market and the banking system. Whereas in China, you're on your own, you buy anything, you don't know what's going to happen. And I've heard those stories from many people who bought companies and then, they got embezzled or confiscated, and they couldn't do anything. So that's a huge issue. And then, practically speaking, yes, the RMB is in the SDR, but the special drawing rights, but it's only like 10%. Yeah.
Okay. 10%. So people are out of their minds if they think that the yuan's going to replace the dollar.
I mean, look, anything's possible in 100 years, but not within the next, 5 or 10 years.
The S&P may even break 10% in the next 100 years. So
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Anything, yes, it may go down a little bit. Yes.
I'll be right eventually if I'm still alive. So let me ask you this: there's going to be a press statement made by, I believe, the foreign ministry in North Korea at 3 p.m. GMT. Any idea what? It's kind of unusual for them to make statements instead of just, going ahead with a test. Any idea what might be in the brewing with them and what they're going to announce?
North Korea, I have to admit, I'm not a specialist. You see, China, I understand because I have that background knowledge, but North Korea, I don't follow too much. My bottom line is always, it won't be too bad. And the status quo will usually wins because neither the United States has an interest to invade North Korea, nor does China have an interest for that to happen. So I would say those two are more powerful than the idiot in charge of North Korea, who, he could do something really stupid that would then escalate things. There's a small chance.
Okay. But, so I know you also follow crypto, and I think it's interesting timing that you're here today, a week after China cracked down on Bitcoin. What's the rationale? What's the rationale for that, and how successful do you think they'll be? Is Jamie Dimon right, and or are the Chinese trying to do this to stop some money flows and try and control everything?
So this is good. I wanted to talk about that. To answer your last question, yes, the Bitcoin has always been a thorn in the eyes of the Chinese authorities because it's outside the banking system and people have been using it to get money, not even out of the country. I mean, as soon as you transfer it from the exchange to a wallet, it's out of the country. You don't have to, transfer it to an exchange in Europe or in the United States. As soon as it's on a blockchain info wallet, it's out of the country, they can't touch it. So this has, but I imagine, China, they had trillions of outflows. That's another thing. China has so many outflows that's not typical for a reserve currency. But anybody who's more interested in that topic really should read that article here on our website, why the Chinese yuan won't be the world's reserve currency. I list a lot of reasons there. Back to Bitcoin. So yes, it's probably been minimal, but maybe they see the potential that in a crisis it could really become big, and many hundreds of billions could flow into Bitcoin, because so far I think through Bitcoin, I would guess less than 100 billion left the country in China, and they lost more. They lost 1 or 2 trillion in capital outflows in the last 5 years alone. So it's not, it's not that significant. But the Chinese, they don't like anything they can't control. So so they banned the ICOs, which I think is a good thing. I'm not a fan of ICOs. Bitcoin I like because it's not controllable, and it actually is true to what it promises to be, sound money. But we know that the exchanges are going to shut down, and I've heard some rumors like here. This guy, he's head of research at Blockchain Capital, and he says we haven't seen the worst yet. OTC trading is going to be banned. Mining facilities may be taken over.
So there's finally a war against Bitcoin.
Yes. And by the way, I've heard that through other channels too. So, this is all unofficial and stuff like that. But I've heard it through my network that, yeah, they may even ban it on a protocol level where they build, they ban it on the Great Firewall. So you can't send Bitcoin transactions. And then the question is, what happens to the price? Like, in my opinion, I'm not a chartist. I don't have these fancy charts, but, look at the price every once in a while. And you see that, I think the worst was priced in here at 3,000 because we didn't know what was going to happen. And then we get confirmation, okay, the exchanges are going to shut down. Okay, we've been waiting for that to happen anyway for the last 3 years. So now it's happening, price rebounded strongly. Now we don't know what happens to OTC trading, ownership, and mining. But, it's going to be an interesting test to find out how Bitcoin
looks like it could go either way.
Right now, it looks like it's
3,000. Right? Yeah. Looks, I could make a case for 5,000, or breaking that 3,000 low.
Absolutely.
Would make it pretty vulnerable to take it to, down to 1.
Yes, well, not to 1, but probably down to 1,000.
Yeah, that's what I meant. 1,000.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Not $1. And so, but it's an interesting experience because that is true. The Bitcoin community largely believes in. That's why a lot of people are buying it. It's independent of governments. The government can't control it. It's sound money, and you can use it even under the most adverse circumstances. So my opinion is, let the Chinese try it. Let the Chinese ban it. And my guess is it's going to be okay. Obviously, there's not going to be any more speculative volume coming because they banned the exchange, which may be a good thing because the Chinese have a bad gambling habit. And you can still, and that depends on one thing. Can Bitcoin survive in China? The question is, can the free internet survive in China? And I know they tried banning the VPNs, but they haven't succeeded. So as long as the VPNs succeed and you can still access your blockchain wallet and you can still, basically send transactions, you can earn Bitcoin, and you don't even have to use local Bitcoins. You can still, buy and sell them privately. And there's not much that Chinese can do against it. So I'm cautiously optimistic that this will be resolved in a positive manner, but obviously there's going to be some short-term volatility.
What a very interesting interview. I'm so glad I reached out to you, Valentin, on Twitter, and to get these. After hearing what goes on in China, I certainly hope that our country is cautious about getting into any hot conflict with them. I think they should remember what happened in Korea in the 50s when they came over the mountains and, humbled MacArthur. And, a country, I don't know if it's happening in the US, but a country that places such a low value on humanity that it's just a product to harvest organs. I'd rather be friends than enemies. So, great interview with you, and I know that there are people listening or will hear this that are going to want to follow your writing. So on Twitter, you're at VXS Schmid, and is there a web address for Epoch Times? Or
yeah, I have most of my stuff on Twitter. Yep, at VX Schmid. And then
Okay.
I have my author page at Epoch is right here. So you can just Google Epoch Times and my name. And
yeah, nice. Very. I mean, you cover a lot of different ground, but you know, it's all part of the big jigsaw puzzle, isn't it, Valentin?
Absolutely, everything is connected, and we can only have a sneak peek into most things because a lot of things are quite complicated.
Yes. Yeah. The dark web is there's darkness out there, and a lot of things never come to light. So, thank you for your efforts as journalists to dig them up and keep people informed, and appreciate the fact that we've met, and perhaps we could have another conversation down the line and see what develops here with the inner power struggles in China and what's happening geopolitically and economically with the U.S. and China down the road, my friend.
Absolutely, Dale. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Okay, well, thank you again, everyone. Thank Valentin Schmid for being with us and covering Bitcoin and China and game theory. So that's it for us today, F.A.C E. We'll see you tomorrow for Turnaround Tuesday. Remember that there's only 7 days left, 8 days left to subscribe to get into the trading room. And I look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. And most of all, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. See everyone tomorrow. Thank you again, Valentin.
Thanks a lot, Dale. Take care.
Okay. I'll be tweeting this interview on Twitter later on in the day.
So you're going to edit it?
Yeah, that's produced, and then I'll get you a copy of the interview.
Okay, fantastic. Well, yeah, let me tell you, thanks a lot. I will definitely promote it. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That was a great opportunity, and I hope I could provide some insight because, as you say, a lot of things are hard and it takes a lot of research until you develop your framework. And then once you have a framework, stuff that happens sort of easier to understand, but still, like, many times you really have to get knee deep into this stuff, and that usually then leaves 1 or 2 or 3 areas where you can really do some research, because like even crypto and Bitcoin, like if you really want to understand what's going on with the different protocols and stuff, like I was much more scared about the hard fork and Bitcoin Cash and SegWit, because if they screw up the protocol, the whole thing is screwed up, you know, it's like destroyed from inside. But, you know, if China comes from outside, tries to ban it, yeah, you know, let them try it. That's okay. But that takes so much time to like learn about all these things.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what I mean. Thank you for your mission to condense it, and for old timers like me, make it comprehensible. Okay.
So
thank you, buddy.
Where are you based?
Excuse me?
Are you in New York?
I'm in California.
Ah, okay. Wow, it's early over there. Okay.
Yeah, I'm like a farmer. All right, buddy.
You farm the news. Okay, yeah. Do reach out if you want to talk again, and I'll definitely promote the interview once it's ready.
All right. Thank you, Valentin. See you guys. See everyone tomorrow.
Bye.
Adios.
Bye.